Today, we're going to take a look into the worst disasters in the history of aviation. So strap in. Even after the overwhelmingly disastrous year for aviation in 2025, full of bizarre missing planes, unfortunate collisions, and just plain old bad luck, it's nothing compared to the catastrophic loss of life, history's top 5 most devastating aviation disasters. Let's get into it. Number 5. Saudi Arabian Flight 163. This was a disaster waiting to happen. This happened back in 1980, and you just can't make up how incompetent all of the people in charge of the 287 passengers were. Both pilots had terrible performance records, and neither of them should have been cleared to fly in the first place. Even the flight engineer on board had previously lost his pilot's license due to his abysmal performance. The flight, operated by a Lockheed L-1011 TriStar, was traveling from Karachi, Pakistan to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, with a 2-hour stopover in Riyadh. Shortly after their layover, the crew received smoke warnings from the cargo hold. As the situation worsened and the fire began to bloom to epic proportions, the captain declared an emergency and turned the plane around to go back to Riyadh for an emergency landing. The aircraft touched down safely, which was actually an outstanding bit of flying by the captain. We'll give him that much. But that's where any wise decision-making stops, we're afraid. Instead of an immediate evacuation, the plane instead taxied to a remote area of the airport. No one thought to, shut down the engines, preventing the ground personnel from opening the doors and exacerbating the smoke buildup inside the hull of the aircraft. By the time the engines were turned off, by the maintenance teams outside no less, it was too late. Every single one of the 301 souls on board had perished from smoke inhalation. Everything from the delayed evacuation, the poor emergency response, to the insufficient fire suppression systems, not to mention incompetent leadership skills to make life-saving decisions in emergency situations, were all to blame. And worst of all, most of the passengers were on their way to Mecca for their religious pilgrimage. Number 4. Turkish Airlines Flight 981, also known as the Ermenonville air disaster, was the first crash in aviation history to claim more than 300 lives in a single event. It also held the position of the most deadly aircraft disaster in the world for 3 years before our number 1 spot knocked it down to number 2. The McDonnell Douglas DC-10 crashed into the Ermenonville forest near Paris, France, killing all 346 people on board. The flight was traveling from Istanbul, Turkey to London, England, with a stopover in Paris, France. The first leg of the flight went as expected. That's until they reached Orly Airport in France for their quick layover. Shortly after takeoff, just as the aircraft climbed past 11,000 feet, the rear cargo door suddenly blew off its hinges, causing an explosive decompression. This played out like the overactive imagination of a nervous flyer, or something out of a fever dream in a Final Destination movie. The force of the decompression ripped apart segments of the cabin floor, ejecting the 6 passengers from the aircraft that were seated closest to the door, seats and all. The instantaneous decompression was utterly catastrophic. It was so extreme that it severed some of the control cables, leaving the pilots unable to steer the plane at all. Flight 981 was instantly caught in a doomed trajectory, completely out of control and plunging straight into the forest at high speeds, virtually disintegrating on impact. From the moment that the door flew off to the time that they hit the ground, it only took 77 seconds for all 346 people on board to perish. It was later determined that the cargo door had not been properly secured due to a design flaw in the DC-10's locking mechanism. Shockingly, this design flaw was known about for 2 whole years, and it had already blown off another DC-10's door during takeoff. Now, McDonnell Douglas deemed that recalling the entire fleet all at once was just too expensive, so instead, they allowed all of the DC-10s in operation to continue on while they fixed them one by one at a turtle-slow pace. Undoubtedly, their slow, cost-saving response was to blame for this immense loss of life, to the likes of which the world had never seen before at that time. Number 3. The Charkhi-Dadri mid-air collision in 1996 over Haryana, India is one of the most unfortunate and horrifyingly inconceivable crashes of the 90s. The disaster involved Saudi Arabian Airlines Flight 763, a Boeing 747, and Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 1907, an Ilyushin IL-76. The Saudi flight had just departed from Indira Gandhi International Airport in Delhi, heading toward Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, while the Kazakh flight was descending towards Delhi from Shymkent, Kazakhstan. Air traffic control instructed the Kazakh aircraft to maintain 15,000 feet, while the Saudi aircraft was cleared to climb to 14,000 feet. However, due to miscommunication and poor English proficiency among the Kazakh crew, they descended below their assigned altitude, straight into Flight 763. The impact caused both aircrafts to disintegrate in midair, scattering wreckage and raining the body parts of all the 349 people inside the two planes over the horrified villagers of Charkhi-Dadri. In the final seconds of the cockpit recordings, the pilots of 763 were heard reciting the Islamic istighfar, a prayer for mercy and forgiveness, a haunting reminder that life is utterly unpredictable. Number 2. Japan Airlines Flight 123 in 1985 is the deadliest single aircraft accident in history, and the most deadly accident in Japan involving aircrafts to this very day. The flight, operated by a Boeing 747SR, was traveling from Tokyo's Haneda Airport to Osaka's Itami Airport with 524 people on board. Just 12 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft suffered a catastrophic structural failure due to an improper repair made years earlier following a tail strike incident. The failure led to explosive decompression, tearing off a large portion of the vertical stabilizer and severing all hydraulic systems. This is proof of the old saying in aviation: the long shadow of maintenance debt will cash in on bad repairs eventually. Never was this saying about airliners' habits of making budget repairs more accurate than for Flight 123. Despite the complete loss of control, the crew managed to keep the plane airborne for a full 32 minutes, desperately attempting to return to Tokyo. However, the aircraft succumbed to uncontrollable oscillations, eventually crashing into Mount Takamagahara in Gunma Prefecture, Japan. Miraculously, there were 4 survivors, but unfortunately, the other 520 passengers didn't make it out alive. And finally, we have reached the most devastating, deadly, and catastrophically grim disaster of all. The Tenerife airport disaster occurred on March 27, 1977 at Los Rodeos Airport, now called Tenerife North Airport in the Canary Islands, Spain. The disaster involved 2 Boeing 747s, a KLM Flight 4805, and Pan Am Flight 1736, which had been diverted to Tenerife due to a bomb threat at their original destination, Gran Canaria Airport. The airport was overcrowded, forcing aircrafts to taxi on the runway instead of a separate taxiway. To complicate matters even more, thick fog reduced visibility, making communication between pilots and air traffic control critical. As the Pan Am aircraft was still taxiing, the KLM crew mistakenly believed they had clearance to take off. The KLM captain initiated takeoff prematurely, colliding with the Pan Am plane still on the runway. The impact caused several devastating explosions, killing all 248 people aboard the KLM flight and 335 of the 396 on the Pan Am flight. Only 61 survivors escaped from the front section of the Pan Am aircraft, simply because they happened to be seated farthest away from the initial impact and back-to-back explosions. And they had escaped just in time, too. Those that were able-bodied rushed towards the crumpled opening ahead of them. The last few survivors exited just seconds before the fire engulfed the entire front section, too. This culminated in a death toll of 583, officially making it the most deadly aviation disaster in the world. Let us know in the comments section below which one of the top 5 most devastating airplane tragedies you'd like us to cover first. Until next time, fly true, fly safely, and reach your destination intact.